Welcome to edition number 7 of the Three Amigos. And we are
Peter Frowine.
Richard Dillman.
And I'm Regis Tremblay. And tonight, I think we have a very good show for you. We've been looking forward to doing this for some time. Now, each of us have been living in Russia for a considerable amount of time. Peter has been here for a little over 2 years. Richard has been here for a little more than 10. And I have been here permanently for 5.5 years. And we want to share with you our views, our perception of what Russia looks like to each of us today. We all think that Russia is entering a new golden age. Now, Peter, I'm going to throw it to you first. Why is it that you think that Russia is entering this new period of excellence, of leadership, whatever?
Well, for about 3 years before I came to Russia in 2023, I started doing research on Russia. And by the time I came to Russia in 2023, when I crossed the Russian border guards asked me, why are you coming to Russia? And I said, I believe Russia will be the best country to live in for the next 100 years. And the two border guards looked at me like I was insane. I'm not insane. What I found in my research, even before I came here, I was extremely impressed with many things. And I've created a small list of those things. First of all, Christianity has been in Russia now for over 1,000 years. And it's there was a time during communism where it was dormant and underground. But after the fall of the Soviet Union, the Orthodox Christians in Russia came out and started practicing openly again. And today, Russia is this really neat um, um, combination of not just Christians, but also Muslims and uh, people who practice Judaism and also Buddhists. And they all get along, fine next to each other. They're even here in Yalta. There's Christian churches, Orthodox churches right next to Muslim mosques, and I don't know if is there a Jewish temple here in Yalta? I don't know of one, but there might be one. But so um, and Russia has, and I didn't know this before I came to know. I knew there was quite a diverse group of ethnic groups in Russia, but the number is huge. There's 193 ethnic groups all across Russia, and everyone gets along fine. Now, one of the biggest things that I knew in my research before I came to Russia is I was extremely not happy with my own government, but I had looked closely at the Russian government and I'm very, very impressed and was and still am with President Putin and the Russian leadership. And it's not just President Putin, but it's people like Foreign Minister Lavrov, um, uh, Dmitry Medvedev, Maria Zakharova. I think I'm butchering that name a little bit. The philosophers Alexander Dugin. There's Russian CEO of Sberbank, Herman Graf, and they're all extremely good leaders, and I'm still even more and more impressed with their leadership today. And I guess I didn't really wasn't clear about exactly how the Russian government was run, but I would call the Russian government today this hybrid between socialism, capitalism, and a republic. And so there's some other things that I looked at too. Right now the U.S. economy is struggling and in deep trouble, and the Russian economy, yeah, relative to other economies in the world, is in extremely good shape. The debt to GDP ratio now is between somewhere between 15 and 20%, which is extremely low relative to other countries. Like right now, the debt to GDP ratio of the United States is 125%, which is completely out of control. But even within the BRICS countries, um, Russia is doing extremely well, and it's that debt to GDP ratio is extremely low. Now, another thing I knew and I've confirmed even more is this economic alliance that Russia has established within the BRICS alliance.
Peter,
You
can
know,
I
it's
interrupt?
sure.
We're going to come back to that. And I
Okay.
know you've got a list of
Okay.
things why you think Russia is entering this new golden age.
Yeah.
But I want to get Richard's initial reaction. Richard, you've been here in Russia for over 10 years. You didn't come to the metropolis, Moscow, St. Petersburg, or even Yalta. You ended up in Siberia. What is it that makes you think Russia is so special in the world today?
Well, it's just so huge. It's really a continent. It might be a country, but it's the size of a continent. It's 11 time zones. And when you're out in Siberia, you can realize the immensity of it. It's just tremendous. It's like, even at night you would go out, especially if you're out on a side road, if there's not too much light, and you can see the stars. It's just amazing. I've many times seen, just things just shooting over like, I don't know, meteors and stuff. Quite a few times at night I'd be out, just gazing outside or just walking around and wow, what was that? And the stars just really jump out at you. It's like, especially like I said, if there's not too much, light, exterior light on the street or something. But yeah, it's amazing. It's an amazing place. It's, you know, they say, oh, it's just a big gas station or something like that. But I don't know. I was in the Krasnoyarsk Krai area and the Khakassia region in southern Siberia, and I think that area there is something like 4 million square miles of timber. So I think they got a little lumber out there too, not just a gas station. Now they also had that Power of Siberian One when I first came to Krasnoyarsk City and was living there, and we had a summer home in Khakassia, which was 240 miles south. So I got to see that region somewhat, southern Siberia and that Krasnoyarsk Krai. They had the power of Siberia One. What it was a gas line uh, from the Krasnoyarsk region going through Mongolia to China. And now they have just completed number two, Power of Siberia. So that's a big thing. That's a big thing for China. It's a real big thing for Russia, and it really helps the whole area and open up the East itself. And that see, like the area I'm talking about would be pretty much halfway across Russia. That's how immense and how big it is. So, but you know, these are just a few things. We could go on and on. There's so many things like economic corridors that are planned for the future in Russia, or have already been ongoing, especially like the cold weather sea lanes which cut out 5 days. See, they have Russian cutters, nuclear cutters that cut the ice out, so they're able to open up these sea lanes, and that cuts out 5 days of travel for China and India to go to for goods to Russia and Scandinavia and into Europe. So these are massive undertakings, but these are plans into the future that are really serious. I mean, you can go on and on.
Richard, let me interrupt you.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's so many of them.
well, we're going to come back to more of them. I know that you've got a
Okay,
number
great,
of things on your list, but
great. Yeah,
I want to ask you. Listen, you ended up in Siberia for a number of years before you came down here to civilization. But
yeah.
what a lot of people don't understand is parts of Siberia are highly developed, highly modern, large cities with incredible wealthy people because of gas, oil, and minerals. Now, what I'd like you to give your impression about is Siberia what a lot of Americans think is some far off place in a frozen tundra where Stalin used to send people to the gulags. Is that what it was
That
really like?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's just a wonderful place. Where I was at, there's 4 seasons, although autumn is very short. I mean, it's finished now there pretty much. Autumn begins sometime. Well, autumn begins in very end of August and ends by I'd say October 15th. It's done, and the weather, it starts getting pretty darn cold there. But I mean, in the summer, you can get 90-degree weather there. It can get real hot. It can get humid. Sure, and no, and you have in the spring, you know, you know, uh, I've seen it snow in early May, but people kind of welcome that because it kind of gets the ground nice and wet and gets it set up for the garden. I've also seen problems because of the deep frost where we were, that flooding in May and June, even at the beginning of July, because sometimes the frost goes down so deep. I'd say at least 4 to 5 feet. Okay, so you could start a garden, but you got to watch. You have to watch some of the stuff that the roots can't stand. You could start the cold stuff even in May, but you can't just put pepper. I've learned it the hard way. You can't have nice peppers and plant them. Uh, you have to wait even sometimes the end of June at the beginning,
So,
because
Richard,
the the
Richard,
frost just comes up and starts flooding. It starts flooding all over,
so
and
it was
it can
what
flood over roads and stuff. Yeah.
what you're
So
saying, Richard. What you're saying was a very short growing season, and
absolutely, yeah,
and
absolutely, yeah,
and
absolutely. You better,
to be
yeah,
fully transparent, okay, you didn't live in a big city for a lot of years. You were living in a
no,
small village, and
right,
you told me once that two things. One, you had a neighbor that was stealing electricity from your house with a long extension cord, which I thought was hilarious. But you also told
well,
me, Richard, you told me that your best friend was the neighbor's horse. Come on. Now, how
yeah,
civilized was that? How
it
modern
was
progressive was that?
that was awesome. That was awesome. Me and my dog. Well, my dog was with me too, David. He was around with me all through. He died here in Yalta, so he was all 7 years with me in Siberia. So yeah, we would go out. Well, the people not next door to me, but right next door to that house used to have. They had beautiful Arabian horses, like brown and black horses. They were just, and they would usually have anywhere between 10 and 20 horses they'd be raising. That they specialized in that, and they also had a few cows and probably eight, 7 or 8 cows and a couple of bulls, and they had an array of stuff. Everybody had animals there except for us. We just didn't have animals, you know. But what we did was we grew as much vegetables as we could on about 3/4 of an acre. We did a lot. We grow, and we would hand it out to people. We go to the government when we went into town. We go to the government building and lay whatever bunch of vegetables. But we had a lot of vegetables. We had what they call a podval, which is a root cellar, and we would store that stuff there for probably a year. I learned a lot. Every year was a learning experience, but the stuff would grow, and with fertilizer from the cow manure and all the other animals and the compost. It was just stuff would grow, just unbelievable. I'd send pictures to people on Facebook, and they would go, "Oh my God!" I remember sending one picture, a Swiss chard I had over my shoulder, and then I put it. It was so big, the Swiss chard covered the whole hood of my Dodge Caliber. One leaf. Was that sort of stuff. And I had to go. What we did was we grew flowers, and we actually introduced quite a lot of new flowers, like Mexican sunflowers, into the village, because our main goal was to grow the vegetables, but we wanted to support the bee population in the area. So we would grow I could show you the pictures of cosmos we had, and we had me and my wife every year we just more and more flowers we knew. So we had it was just a wonderful experience living there. It really was.
All right, we're going to come back. We're going to come back to you, but I'm going to go over to Peter now. Now, Peter, we're talking about our experiences and our perceptions of Russia, and how, well, we've talked about a new golden age. It is not what people think about Russia during certainly the Soviet era.
Yeah.
Some people, pretty educated ones, would have to know that there was a czarist period prior to the revolution, was highly civilized. And so anyway, what I want to do is come back to you on further reflections, one or two things that would explain why you think Russia is such a great place and why it is experiencing a new golden age or a incredible rise in terms of what other countries in the world, in terms of its history. So back to you.
Well, one of the things I didn't know before I came to Russia is how bad things were after the fall of the Soviet Union here in Russia. And it's my understanding that the 1990s here in Russia were exponentially worse than anything the U.S. experienced during the Great Depression. The lifespans for men went way, way down. There was rampant alcoholism. It was really a very bleak period because of how the economy was handled mainly by Western companies who came in and tried to take advantage of Russia. Well, thank God President Putin came into power in the year 2000 and turned things around. And in the early 2000s, Russia made a great move. They joined this alliance called the BRICS Alliance, which includes China and India and Brazil and South Africa. And now it's actually even grown bigger than that. But the BRICS Alliance now is I've studied BRICS Alliance closely, and the GDP of the BRICS as of 2020 is bigger than the GDP of the G7 of the Western countries. And so for the last 5 years, they've crossed, the GDP of the BRICS is going up and the GDP of the G7 is going down, and it's actually accelerating in both directions. And this alliance it's a very key economic and political alliance, especially economic alliance that especially between actually the three countries that or the two countries that are strongly supporting Russia right now are India and China. And this idea that the West thinks they can, somehow come between Russia and China, it's just a completely delusional. But China is already the new economic powerhouse of the world. And Russia's, you know, providing China with a lot of resources, a lot of energy, a lot of, minerals that China needs. And so it's this economic engine of the BRICS is it's the future. It's not all it's just the future. It's the present. And President Trump has said things like, "Well, we need to defeat BRICS." Well, at this point, that's just impossible. It's just not. It's just not a possible thing to do. So Russia has all the resources it needs to. I mean, just the energy resources is the lifeblood of any country, and Russia has energy resources in abundance. And just for some numbers to give you a perspective, Russia's biggest energy resource is natural gas, and 55% of Russia's energy comes from natural gas. It has 67 years of reserves at the current rate of usage. It has oil, 20% of its energy comes from oil, and it has 24 years of reserves. Now, coal is the biggest. It's not the biggest percentage. It's coal is 15% of its energy comes from coal, but it has 366 years of coal reserves. And then nuclear, which is only a very small percentage of Russian energy usage right now, is 7%, but it has 174 years of uranium reserves. So it's Russia right now is positioned very well as far as its resources.
So, Peter, just to follow up a little bit on that, Russia definitely has an abundance of natural resources. You just outlined some of them, but also in terms of water, in terms of timber, in terms, I don't remember if you mentioned fertilizers, but uranium and fertilizers and other minerals are still being sold to the United States, which is really amazing when you really think about that. And I think what all of us really have experienced is what you're talking about. Russia in the last 25 years has risen from the ashes. It's the phoenix rising from the ashes. It's a modern day miracle. Just looking at it economically, I think.
Regis, the bizarre thing is the Western leaders still think this is the Russia of 30 years ago.
Yeah, a gas tank, filling station. Yeah, it's what a terrible misconception, misunderstanding, and I think a very very strategic mistake.
Oh yeah.
Richard, do you have any other thoughts? I don't know whether it's on the economy or whether it's on other things that you have discovered here in terms of the growth of Russia because of sanctions, in terms of agriculture, including manufacturing. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, agriculture, especially in organic agriculture. I got the figures here, some figures that I did throw them up, but it really amazed me when I first went to Krasnoyarsk. And it didn't matter. I mean, in the dead of winter, 20, 30, 40 below zero, we were able to get fresh lettuce, fresh celery, and made in Siberia through these greenhouses.
Greenhouses.
It's just amazing. Greenhouses and you have to remember in January and stuff, the amount of sunlight you have not much, but they were able to do that. I forget the exact process they had though, but the lady once explained to me how the hell they were able to do that. Yeah, stuff like that. They started. I noticed too when I first got there in 2014, the sanctions. As soon as I got there, the Ukraine and the Donbass was just starting to blow up. That was I think in March or April, and I was in there around. I came in July. I was in there prior in 2014. That's the year I came, but I went originally from March to April, and then I came back in July, and that was my permanent coming back. But I remember that that stuff there, and
So,
kind of lost my
Richard,
train of thought here, but.
Richard, I know something that is very dear to your heart. Let's talk about the growth of agriculture alone right now since the sanctions. Now, from what I've
Yeah,
observed, and I've traveled by train, not to Siberia, never, not yet. Maybe someday, if I live long enough, I'll get there. But in the southern part of Russia, you can travel by train for miles, kilometers and kilometers and kilometers, and you are
absolutely.
passing incredible fields of wheat. I cannot believe the incredible miles and miles of sunflowers, because the production of sunflower seeds and sunflower oil is an enormous business here. But Richard,
Yeah.
I want you to talk about you mentioned organic. I want you to talk about your impressions on the types of products that are coming from the farms, from agriculture, whether it be grains, whether it be fruits and vegetables, whether it be chickens or pork or sheep, mutton. What are your impressions
Yeah.
of the food that Russia is now growing?
Well, I think we were talking this afternoon too. Just the dairy aisle and the amount of stuff like kefir and all the different um, bio organic bio stuff for your immune system. And we have it every morning. We drink kefir or yogurt, and these are all organic yogurts that you can get. You can get some with sugar in it too, but we don't get that. And it's readily available. But so besides being organic, it's so darn healthy. It just it's a game changer for your health.
So, Richard, you're talking about organic. Now let's get more specific. GMOs are forbidden here, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so, how would you describe the uh, the vegetables, the fruit, and the meat? How different are they processed or not compared to the United States or other parts of the world?
There's a lot of poisons and stuff that aren't in the foods here. When you drink milk here, you get just remember. All right, I'm 77 years old, so some of us older folks from the boomer generations can remember when we were kids in America. We used to have the milkman would come to the house, and we would get milk, and the cream would be at the top. Well, it's like that. That's what I now. A lot of times, if I want a snack before I go to bed, I'll just get some Kosel powder, which is what do you call it? Goat milk powder, and I put it in some hot water, and I have nice cookies with it, and I drink it just like when I was a kid. It just tastes so good, and it's just so good for you. The beneficial stuff from the goat milk is just unbelievable.
So,
healthy fats, healthy.
what we're talking
healthy
about,
yeah, and this
what we're
is just
talking about,
facts. It's loaded. The supermarket's loaded with everything. The supermarkets here. You go to a dairy aisle here, and it's amazing. I'm still amazed.
We've talked many times at how there are no processed foods here. And we were talking earlier today when the three of us were at our weekly Wednesday lunch at our favorite pizzeria. We were talking we were talking about this topic and the fact that there are no processed foods. And for example, with vegetables, if you don't eat vegetables very fast, they go bad in a hurry. There's no,
Yeah.
they don't use, poison stuff. They use fertilizer, but they don't use insecticides, at least not to my knowledge. And so, as you mentioned, the food is very clean, it's GMO free, and for the most part, it's organic. And, one of the other things, because I want to make sure we get to it, Peter has not been here long enough, and he's not yet married to a Russian. But Richard, you and I are both married to Russians. Now, I want to talk about medicine. You and I have both experienced it, whether it be a cold, a sore throat, or a chest cold, or even things like people don't talk about this usually in public setting like this, but constipation or diarrhea. You don't run uh, to the medical center. We call it an apteka here, but it's really a pharmacy. You don't run there for the cure. These Russian women have these cures
Yeah.
that take care of all of that. What was your experience with some of these things that
Well, just
a part of
yeah.
Russian culture where they don't run to the drugstore for every little thing? They have their own cures. What are some of the things that you experienced that come from a natural
Just
environment?
recently. Yeah, just recently when I came back from America, about a week later, I caught like we call a grip here, like pretty darn well, head cold and a nasty one. It was a heavy mucus, that sort of stuff, and I had a real sore throat. And so I was going to, try maybe go to the doctor or something. So I told my wife, boy, my throat will go and hurt. And she said, oh, no problem. But she gave me some Rumachka. That was from the apteka, from the drugstore, just in a tea bag. What it is like a flower, like daisies. It's a daisy flower. Nothing special, just a daisy flower. Took care of my sore throat like nothing. Then I got down with a pretty, I had some of the symptoms. I had a pretty heavy fever one night. I was shaking and stuff. My wife, of course, she just come right in, grabbed a bottle of vodka, and I got a rub down my whole body. But seriously, that fever was gone in 30 minutes. I was right. It was like, my God, that would just work so darn well.
Yeah, on the one hand, I would say, God, what a waste of vodka, but covering your body
Yeah,
with
no,
it.
no. It's like, yeah, she would just rub me down. All my skin got covered pretty much head to toe with vodka. But
I've
it
had the
really
same.
felt good. It was just, yeah, yeah. You were doing she was
I've had
doing
the
you with
I've
a
had this
mustard thing, yeah.
I've had the
It's
same treatment, Richard. Uh, but I had another
but yeah,
treatment for like a deep chest cold. Um, it was a combination of some kind of mustard paste. Now, when we were kids, my mother used to use Vicks Vapor Rub and put a
I remember
towel
that.
on top of it, but I don't even know if they have Vicks Vapor Rub here, but they had this mustard thing. And I had this chest cold once a few years ago, and my wife said, no, 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 we're not going to the pharmacy. We're going to do this. And she put this mustard kind of paste on me, covered it up with a towel. My God, it burnt like hell. I mean, it made my skin turn red. But you know what? The chest cold was gone almost like that. So,
Yeah.
and this is enough for now, but
Well, there's
they
another one
have,
too. We use, yeah,
no, I was going to say, there are so many natural cures from herbs, from flowers, from whatever else they have that they find out in nature
yeah,
that cure all kinds of. And I want to tell you something. If anybody is listening and they ever have trouble with constipation, you want to eat fresh figs, even dried figs. Fill up on fresh
Yeah,
figs
they
and
were
dried
great,
figs,
great.
and
Yeah,
your problem is
we
solved.
eat those every day. We eat a couple of those every day. Absolutely.
for
Yeah.
for your daily regimen. Okay, Peter, I'm going to come back to you. Now we're talking about a number of things, and both of you guys are really more informed in terms of the economy than I am, but there's more to Russia than just the economy, its resources, uh, its agriculture and food. What else and why else do you think that Russia is entering what you have called before a kind of a golden age?
Well, I think one of the key parts of this is the Russian soul. Is Russians are very adaptive. They're very thoughtful. They're actually very deep thinkers too. You know, President Putin is a good representation of that because I think there's an old adage, you know, measure what 10 times and cut once or whatever. He's used this, you know, this old adage to, and this is, I find this that many Russians are very thoughtful, very intelligent um, people, and they're very industrious too. They're a lot like Americans were, you know, back when we invented a lot of things. Because if you look at what's going on in Russia today, it's amazing. Even here in Crimea, the amount of money that the government is putting into new infrastructure. You know, we see it everywhere here in Crimea, but it's not just here. It's places, you know, it's Sochi, Moscow, all the way to the other end of the country in Vladivostok, where they've just the modernization and the commitment by the Russian government to modernize is amazing. Now, it's not to say that there's still some level of poverty in Russia, and I think it's getting smaller and smaller by the day. But you know, Russia is addressing that, and but this I feel a strong sense and I try to explain to Russians too. I say, you guys have everything you need to be successful. You have all the resources you need. You have the attitude. You're extremely hard workers. And I even get approached almost on a once a month by friends here who want me to invest in some business that they have here. So they're very much want to see things grow, and they're very entrepreneur oriented in their thinking. And many of them are very successful too, because they're like I said, they're extremely hard workers. And you guys know this, having Russian wives, man. They probably put you guys to work all the time.
Yeah. Well, we hope
Yeah.
you'll find a Russian wife sooner than later, Peter. Um, I wanted to comment on a couple of things. Um, in terms of culture and certainly technology, Russia is world class. And just a couple of examples. Uh, in terms of TV and video production, they rank right up there with the best that's in the United States, the best that's in Europe, just as professional and world class as anybody. You just have to watch a little bit of television, you see it. I've had the good fortune of attending a number of conferences, and the organization is incredible. I mean, really incredible. And the conferences have world-class audiovisual technology in terms of big screens, in terms of 4K video, video cameras, in terms of incredible audio. Uh, they're second to none. And I'm just talking in terms of that technology that Russia has developed that is good as anything else that exists right now in the world.
Now, Regis, I can confirm that because when I moved from America, I lived in Huntsville, Alabama, which is one of the biggest high-tech centers in the U.S. And I can tell you right now, Moscow, St. Petersburg, and other areas in Russia are ahead. And a good example is, I'll just throw this number out there. By 2030, Russia wants to have gigabit fiber optic availability to all Russians everywhere in Russia. That is amazing, and it's a big deal.
Yeah, no, I agree. And in terms of how far the United States has come, not United, Russia has come in the area of technology, they are 10 to 15 years ahead of the United States in the area
Oh,
of
yeah.
military, 10 to 15 years ahead. Hypersonic missiles, because of they've been at war since 2022. They have developed advanced uses of drones, missiles, radar, satellite analysis, you name it, that the United States may never catch up, or it'll take 10 or 15 years to get where Russia is today. But by that time, Russia and China are really so far ahead. There's one
Now,
other thing.
Regis, I can confirm what you've just said because I worked in the U.S. industrial military complex for 7 years. And what you just said is spot on as far as how far ahead Russia is.
Yeah. Um, there's a couple of other things that I would like to mention. In terms of culture, in terms of history, uh, history and culture, Russia has always been highly, highly developed, far
Mhm.
more than the United States. And when I talk about culture, I'm talking about arts, I'm talking about literature. They have some of the greatest uh, poets and authors that many Americans may have heard of. Uh, they have some of the best filmmakers the world has ever known, and that goes back for a long time. They incredible. Uh, in terms of, I mean, just take Russian ballet. There's no other country in the world that can exceed Russia in ballet. I was fortunate to go to the Bolshoi Theater. I was sitting in the second row, center aisle, right above the orchestra pit to see an incredible ballet. And I've seen a couple others here in the Crimea as well, Russian ballet. In terms of the production capability of the symphony orchestras and popular symphonic orchestras is really incredible. It's a much richer culture than I really experienced anywhere in the United States and even while I was living in Europe. It is so culturally rich. It's incredible. Now, one last thing before I send it back to Peter and to look at some of the other things that you've been thinking about that have made Russia really great in so many ways in terms of the rest of the world. Um, I'm drinking a glass of wine, and I want to remind our viewers it is not morning wherever you're viewing in the United States. It's almost 8:45 here in Russia. Um, in terms of wines and wine production in southern Russia, but especially where we live in Crimea, the wines of white and red, white dries, white sweet, and red, and the production of champagne ranks right up there with the rest of the world, with California, with France, with Italy, with Spain. Now, people can argue about this, but I have to tell you this. I'm not a wine connoisseur. I know what I like, and I've experienced uh, wines that are being produced here in southern Russia, but especially Crimea. This industry is growing by leaps and bounds. Peter, you were talking about small, independent entrepreneurs in different businesses. Here in Russia, I have
Mhm.
visited and documented in many videos, small entrepreneurs who came here from other parts of Russia with a dream to start a winery. And what they've done is grown these wineries into producing some of the most amazing wines that I have tasted anywhere. And people who now are coming to, tourists from Russia who are coming to Crimea, are discovering this incredible growth in outstanding wines. I just wanted to sneak that in before we move on. Peter, you've got some other things that you believe show that Russia is entering this new emerging global era.
Well, I want to touch on what you said about wines, though. I was just reading something recently about some of the wineries here in Crimea, and some of them just won international competitions in some of their wines. So, to what you said is just absolutely true. They're being internationally recognized as being world class. And yeah, there's vineyards everywhere here. But no, to um, really I've looked closely to the education system here in Russia,
Oh,
and
I'm glad you're bringing that up.
I know that they, after the fall of the Soviet Union, there was a struggle, and it's they're still trying to find. I think but they're what they need to do as far as make things better. But from what I can see, the Russian public education system is actually at this point better than the public education system in the U.S.
Without a doubt.
Uh, I, I believe these numbers are correct. Is that 94% of Russians have an education level of 12th grade or higher, and that number in the U.S. is only 19%.
Yeah.
And I think those numbers are pretty close to reality from what I can find.
Yeah, let me jump in there if I can, Peter. I'm glad you brought this topic up. Um, that's one of the first things that I discovered on my first trip here in 2016. I met several people who spoke English very well.
Yeah.
Many Russians educated during the Soviet era learned to speak that second language, English, very well. I met several people who were quoting from American authors, poets, and even singing songs and telling me about musicians I had never heard of. And every one of them told me, you know, we actually know more about your literature and your culture and your music than most Americans. I was shocked. But here's the other thing, uh, Eric and Peter, that I learned about the Russian educational system. People don't know much about what happened during the Soviet era. You talked about communism, they talked about poverty, they talked about the gulags, they talked about Stalin and how he massacred so many people. Well, there were several good things that came from that. There wasn't any poverty. People were poor, but they had everything. Everybody had an apartment. Everybody had a job. And in terms of education, there was no discrimination between men and women. In the United States, we talk about a glass ceiling for women. I have met more women here who are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who are doctors, engineers, experts in the fields of high technology and manufacturing. That blew my mind. And the situation exists today. I mean, not only on these higher levels, but you got people who are driving taxi cabs and women who are driving the trolley buses right here in Yalta who have at least a high school degree, and many of these people have been to university. And so this is to me was really mind-blowing. And, I think today, in terms of education, Peter, as you mentioned, compared to what I had, and I thought I had a good education, a very liberal, classic education. I really feel inferior to so many people that I've met and friends that I have here. Uh, it's really incredible. Peter, do you want to finish on that?
Yeah, the one of the big things that I'm seeing and very, very positive to see is it's in one sense it's positive, but in another sense it's not. Is the spiritual and social structure in Russia right now is moving in the right direction, and I'm already hearing and seeing people, and people are starting, Westerners are already starting to move like we have to Russia because they're seeing the degradation of morals, of ethics, and of spiritual values. And some of that woke agenda, some of it's made its way to Russia, but the Russian leadership is very clear when they say this is stuff we want to keep. And I'm not saying everything from the West is bad. I'm not saying this, but this woke agenda, the Russian leadership, and I think much of the Russian public is rejecting it and saying, no, we want traditional values, we want traditional families, and you guys see this like I do every day here in Yalta. I see families with baby carriages, with children playing in the street. This is takes me back to when I was a young kid in the United States and how healthy and normal things were. It's not like that today in the United States and the West. But my point being is, I believe that Westerners who want traditional to be in a traditional environment are going to look at Russia and go, "This is where I want to be." And we're seeing a trickle right now of people coming from the West. But I believe that trickle is going to be at some point thousands, and then I think tens of thousands and probably millions of people from the West. Now, Russia's going to be very um, judicious about who they let come to Russia. They want good people, but I don't think they want this woke, you know, mind virus coming to Russia and because and I say this to Russians all the time, the whole world is changing and it's accelerating. And Russians right now have to realize, okay, Russia's changing too. What are the good parts of the Russian culture that you need to keep, but moving into the future, how do what do you want to be? Do you want to be this strong, family oriented, you know, um, husband and wife marriage, strong families moving into the future? And I think from what I can see, most Russians do.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Um, I think one of the other things that is so remarkable that I've noticed, and I haven't been all over Russia, but I've been to probably almost 2 dozen cities, villages, and towns. Uh, what Russia is an incredibly safe country. Little children, Peter, as you were alluding to, I mean, they could be toddlers, 2 or 3 years old. You see them running free in any of the public areas, and you don't see the parent. And nobody's worried about the kid being snatched or kidnapped. There's almost no crime anywhere in Russia. Violent crime. Uh, I don't know about domestic abuse. I don't hear much about that. It's really not publicized, but I doubt that there's much of that. So it's incredibly safe. Um,
Yeah.
Richard, What are your thoughts? Anything addition to this, or do you want to comment on anything we've been talking about? But why do you think Russia is such a great place to live?
Well, it's all the things you guys been outlining. Basically,
Let me ask you this, Richard, are you happy here?
oh, yeah, extremely happy. Yes,
Do
I
you
like
feel
living here.
do you feel
Nobody,
do you
no, no, yeah, nobody's called me cracker here.
do you feel isolated? Do you feel
I don't have
lonely?
to carry it. I don't have to carry a pistol because I'm an old white guy. I'm serious.
All right, here we go. We're going to finish on this. I'm going to ask each of you this question. Um, do you miss the United States of America? And if so, what is it that you miss?
I miss my grandson deeply.
Peter?
I miss the early 1960s America that's gone. It's not the America that we knew. The 1950s America is gone. But I look at Russia. Russia's the U.S. in the 1950s right now. It's a very wholesome, good country. And do I miss what's going on in America today? No, nope.
Yeah, I agree with what both of you said. I miss my three children and my five grandchildren. I miss the country that I grew up in. Peter, that's what you were talking about. Uh, I grew up in the 1950s, and that was a time when children could go out and play all day long, and nobody worried about you. You didn't come home until nighttime when and my mother would ring a cowbell. And wherever we were in the neighborhood meant it's time for dinner. You better get your little Fanny home. Um, that's kind of what it's like here in Russia today. Completely safe, um, traditional values, a sense of community where people helped each other, where the neighbors looked after you. And if some neighbors saw you doing something you shouldn't have been doing, your mother and father would know about it before you got home. And so it was an incredible time. And I miss that, Peter, as you said, and I'm sure Richard does too. Um, I think the biggest thing that certainly Richard and I would agree on, because we have family back in the well, when I say family, we have children and grandchildren. Um, we not only miss them, but we're both very, very concerned about their future. Richard, would you agree?
Absolutely. Although I know I could go back to the United States and visit, so which I just did this last summer, so
Well,
try and patch things up with a lot of people. But
you keep doing shows like this, and when you go back and you go through customs and immigration, they're probably going to get detained for a while because they know, like everybody else who's well, I shouldn't say everybody, a lot of people who, if they saw this show, they would claim that we have been brainwashed by the Kremlin, that we are Kremlin assets and we are Putinistas. Uh, Peter, what are your thoughts? I would not dare to go back to America because of everything I've done here for the last, well, since 2016, was to produce so many shows that counter the American lies, uh, and so many shows and films that have been presenting Russia in a positive light that I wouldn't risk going back given the political climate there today. But Peter, what about you? You plan on going back? I don't know what happened. We lost Peter. Um, so, in summary, um, we've tried to present the views of three American expats who live here in Russia and have experienced the culture and the people and the lifestyle. And what we've tried to do is really present an unfiltered, objective view of our experiences in Russia. And Richard, you present a very unique view because you first came here and lived in Siberia. Um, what would you say to anybody in America who would say or claim that we have been Putinized? We've been brainwashed by the Kremlin, and we're Kremlin assets. What would you respond to that?
Well, the facts of the thing is basically what Putin has said and done. If you really look at it, is he's killed people. The narrative is kill them with the truth here, and that's what they try to do. I found that the Russian media is pretty truthful. It's nothing like the U.S. media, which is, my God, it's just 180 off. I know of things that happen in here, and when I went back, I was telling people, some of the stuff that you don't even know about or are being told, it's like a total 180 reversal. And I told them, don't believe what I'm saying. You can research it yourself, but it's just, you guys, the media in the United States is way, way off. And even now, some of the alternative media on the internet has been pretty much controlled and being taken over. So people like Alex Jones or Tucker Carlson and stuff. Well, Tucker Carlson, maybe he's starting to change his tune, but some of these people like Joe Rogan, I wouldn't try. Listen, when Joe Rogan talks about MMA and fighting, I listen to him. He knows his stuff. When he gets into politics, there's a narrative there that he can what he can say, what he can't say. He showed his real colors years ago before he got his big podcast job when he was doing I forget the name of the program, when he was out there and he ran cover for the chemtrail operation, the DARPA and stuff like that. So I know where he's from, but basically, I think what President Putin has done all along is realized that if you tell them the truth and keep telling them the truth, after a while, the light shines on you. It shines, and you can't extinguish the truth. You can, your opponents can mock your character and bring up old ways of the Soviet Union or the SSR. It's not that way now. They got rid of that cancer. Took them 73 years or so to get rid of that cancer. Now that the cancer's gone here, the cancer's in the United States. It's in the North America. It's in Canada. No two ways about it. So the people in the United States have got to understand what they're up against.
Yeah,
It took them a long time to get rid of that here.
Yeah.
And this is what's burgeoning into a golden age for the Russians, running their own show.
Yeah,
in the late, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. You made some really good points. We're trying to wrap up here. Peter, we lost you for a couple of minutes there. I'm not sure what happened. But in trying to be completely transparent and honest, we do have problems here in Crimea with the internet. It's off and on. A lot of it has to do with we're under attack by drones from Ukraine just about daily and nightly, different parts of Crimea. And what they do is they cut off the internet, especially the mobile internet. Most evenings, most nights, from who knows what time, early evening, sometimes late evening till sometime in the morning, we have no mobile internet. And so you never know when you're going to lose it. But
Yeah.
Peter, I'm glad you got back in here. Your final thoughts. the question I ask is, what would our response be to people who think that we've been Putinized and that we're assets of the Kremlin? Peter, I think we're having trouble with your internet.
We lose them again, huh?
Yeah. All right, guys. Peter, you can finish this the next time, but we've lost you. I want to thank everybody for sticking with us and watching. We're the three amigos, the three Americans, friends living in Yalta, the Crimea, who are trying to share with everybody our views about Russia, what we've discovered, what we believe is true, what we believe is honest, and what we believe is objective. I want to thank everybody for watching, and my three good friends, my two amigos. We'll see you the next time on the Three Amigos.